It's dangerous, the things that we maybe just adopt as normal and don't actually consider whether they're good or bad. They're not even argued anymore. It's just how it is. Kids just need phones now. It's just how it is.
Well, Erin and I actually we gotta update that bio because Erin and I started Maven 4.5 years ago, and we did it because we care about young people. And not only do we care about young people and discipling the next generation, but we also care about this group in here. You know, this group that is many of you who are parents, and not just parents, but grandparents, and not just grandparents, but Sunday school teachers and youth workers and educators. Really, I think in the church today, we need an army of people who are going to join together, who are going to be allies, and not just say, hey, it's the parent's job, which it is. Primarily, God has given each parent the primary responsibility to disciple their kids. But in a secular, aggressive, hostile, secular campus, we're going to have to band together. And so we're passionate about helping this group here disciple the next generation. In fact, that's one reason my co-author, John Stonestreet, who's the president of the Colson Center, and I wrote a book called A Practical Guide to Culture. In fact, we have a great partnership with the Colson Center. How many of you are familiar with the Colson Center? Okay, good. And the rest of you who aren't, go to colsoncenter.org, check out their work. But Erin and John's wife, Sarah, partner with one another to do the Strong Women podcast. But John and I wrote this book in 2017, and you can see the subtitle, right? Helping the next generation navigate today's world. And then we took it and we youthitized it, and we made a version for students so that parents or youth pastors or educators can read together with students and have really significant conversations. So we wrote a student's guide to culture. And for me personally, and for Erin, the motivation to do this kind of work really boils down to 5 reasons. I have 5 reasons I wanted to write these books. Number 1, Alexis. Number 2, Micah. Number 3, Paige. Number 4, Ella. Number 5, Jonah. Those are our 5 kids.
Sounded like you had a hard time remembering all their names. I was like, am I going to have to jump in here?
Honey, I figured the audience wouldn't realize that I stumbled there, but of course my wife would notice that.
Of course you stumbled on the middle kid's name too.
Anybody here
she won't wear that baggage.
Middle kid? Any of you a middle kid? Okay, are you still in therapy? I get it. I know. Yeah, those are our 5 kids. And what we're going to be talking about are a lot of the uniqueness and the differences between men and women. In fact, I think that plays out when it comes to kids. Like, I'm generally aware that there are like 5, there have been 5 little people roaming around our house. And Erin, on the other hand, I mean, she knows like what is going on every second of every moment of their lives, right? And
I know their shoe sizes, their blood type, important things like that. Whatever. Last time you were signing a kid up for camp or something, you called me and you're like, okay, what year was Jonah born? And I was like, that's literally terrible. But
are there any fathers here with me who struggle with what year? Okay, thank you, man. Thank you for being honest. See, I'm not the only one, honey. So those are our 5 reasons why we do what we do. And so at the beginning of the book, John and I use an analogy to help maybe frame kind of what we need to do with our young people as we prepare for them to be sent back out into the world, to engage the world for the cause of Christ. And now, John lives in Colorado Springs, so it's clear this is not his analogy, all right? Just so you know, this is my analogy. I grew up in Southern California, and when I was in junior high, I remember my parents taking us to the beach all the time. We weren't far from the beach, and just started to, developed a love for the ocean. Erin's been in Southern California all her life. She loves the ocean. But in about 7th grade, I remember being at the beach and noticing that there were these guys who were in the water, and they were further out than most of the other people. And they were sitting on these planks of foam, and they were riding the waves. They were surfing. And I thought, I'm going to do that. That looks amazing. So I started surfing when I was in junior high, surfed through high school, surfed in college. We got married after I graduated from college, and I thought, Erin, it would be amazing if I could teach our kids how to surf and learn to surf with our kids. And so I've been on a mission ever since to teach our kids how to surf. And I realized with our oldest daughter, that you don't put your 2-year-old on a surfboard, kind of push him out into the water and say, go for it, right? And that's probably why she doesn't surf to this day. Anyone an oldest kid? How many oldest sibling in your family? Yeah. Yeah, you also should probably be in therapy, right? Because us parents call you the guinea pig. And so I realized, okay, there's actually got to be a well thought out process here to get my kids to surf with me. And ironically, the very first step, if I'm going to teach my kids how to surf in the ocean next to me, is to protect them from the ocean. I got to protect my kids from the ocean. Now, if all I do is protect my kids from the ocean, will they ever learn how to surf? Obviously not. So protection turns out to be a short-term goal, but it's a very important step in the process, isn't it? Now, in that protection, I'm going to do other things, right? I'm going to start giving them knowledge of the ocean. I'm going to take them into the shallows. This is what we call a foamer right here, right? That's after the wave has broken and it's lost a lot of its energy and it's flat, and it's easy for the kids to ride on the foam. So I'm going to take them out into the foamers. And then as they grow in their experience, as they grow in their knowledge, because they got to have knowledge of the ocean, you got to know when there is like kind of cloudy water and it's a little choppy, that's a rip current, and that'll pull you out. And I've seen people drowning in those, So you got to have that kind of knowledge. And when you grow in your knowledge and experience, I can take you out further, and then I can take you out further till what? Till one day, my kids can paddle out next to me and surf all by themselves. That's the end goal. And so now our 20-year-old son, Micah, our 19-year-old daughter, Paige, they can surf all by themselves. In fact, I'll get a text message tomorrow morning, like from Micah, and he'll have gone and surfed that in the morning, and he'll text me, and he'll be like, Dad, the waves were so good this morning because there's like some south swell coming in. And he'll say, you missed it. And I'm thinking I'm stuck in San Antonio, Oh, no, I'm sorry. Did I say that out loud? I'm not stuck. No, but you get the point. And now, of course, with number 5, this is Jonah. With Jonah now, we've honed this process, right? And so we started him early on. He was in the water, and now earlier than all the other kids, he's out there surfing with us, because he's developed and he's been trained. So protection was the short-term goal to reach the long-term goal of equipping and training. You see the analogy, don't you? In the same way, I think this provides a model for us, right? It is appropriate to protect our kids from the culture. And sometimes we talk about sheltering them. And there can be a negative sense of sheltering, but that's if the long-term goal is protection. The long-term goal with our kids is not protection, it's discipleship, and then to send them out to live out the Great Commission, to be missionaries for Jesus wherever they're at, whatever they do. That's the long-term goal. And so that provides us a framework with what we want to do.
Yeah, we love this illustration of the ocean, so we're going to keep going with this for a little bit. But I think a good way, we talk about culture a lot, and so we want to define it a little bit and help put handles on it for you guys. So one of the best ways we like to think about culture, and I think it's helpful for all of us, is just to think about water and the ocean. And when you are in the water, that's kind of symbolic of what culture is like. It's just all around us. It covers us. It gets us wet. we sometimes aren't aware of how wet we are when we're in the ocean, right? And so culture is the kind of ocean that we swim in on a daily basis. And so in some ways, it's external. It's our values, it's ideas that we hold in the world. And actually, I think that's a good way to think about it. So we break it up into 4 categories. We didn't come up with this. But 4 ways to think about culture is 1 through ideas. So ideas of culture are just kind of what we think is good, what we think is right, what we think is true. Of course, cultures will have different ideas about what is good and right and true. Also, to think about culture as far as champions. Who are the champions in a culture, in our culture? Who are the people that symbolize and influence as a champion of those ideas? Another way that culture is a part of our life is through institutions. So think about all the institutions. The church is one, the family, the government, all kinds of nonprofit groups. So there's all kinds of institutions that make up culture. And then the last one is artifacts. And that's different things like clothing. A big artifact for us today is our phone, right? That's a huge artifact of our culture. So I think, it's good to think about it in this way. And then, of course, that helps us to evaluate what is good and what is bad. What are the good and bad parts of culture? And to think about it through these things. But to think about culture and this idea of the ocean and what we're swimming in and how culture influences us most of all is just that it presents to us and to our children, this is what is normal. This is what is normal. And I think if you think about this, I think we all know how true this is if we think about it in just family. Like, think about your family culture. I don't know if you've ever thought about that. Like the culture you have with your kids, what's your family's culture? And then think about the culture of the family you grew up in. And this became, for me, I didn't realize how normal I thought so many things were in my family until I married this guy. And then we get married, and he has his idea of normal, and I have my idea of normal. And of course, that sometimes went along perfectly, and then sometimes it really clashed. For example, how you celebrate holidays. So the very first Christmas we had as a married couple was difficult because I grew up in a family where my 2 grandmas lived in my city, one next door and one like a mile away. One was a widow and one was divorced. My grandpa lived about 30 minutes away in LA, and so Christmas for my family was you get up, you open presents, you run next door to grandma, you open presents there, you eat breakfast with grandma, you go back home, you change, you go to other grandmas, you open presents there, you have lunch. Bye, grandma, now you drive to LA, you go there, you open more presents, you have dessert, you drive home in a sugar coma, and you fall asleep.
That sounds horrible.
Excuse me. So I love that. And to me, that was normal. This is what you do. It's just normal. Well, this guy grows up in Maryland when he was little, and they would go to his grandma's house in Pennsylvania for a whole week. And so Christmas was you stayed in your pajamas all day. You hung out, you opened presents, you ate, you napped, you did all this stuff. So when Christmas came around for us, and then it's like, well, what are we going to do? I'm like, well, we're going to go to my parents and your parents and then my grandma and then my grandma. And he's like, are you insane? And I'm like, no, why? And he's like, that sounds terrible. He's like, we'll just take turns going. We'll do one Christmas with your family and one. And I'm like, absolutely not. It's not Christmas unless I see my family. So we had this battle because normal to me was not normal to him. And if you are married or have been married, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So much of what we internalize and what our kids internalize as far as culture is just, this is why it's so powerful. It just, to us, is that this is what's normal. This is what's normal. And then C.S. Lewis warns us about culture in this way because he says the most dangerous ideas in a society are not the ones being argued, but the ones that are assumed. He's talking about it's dangerous, the things that we maybe just adopt as normal and don't actually consider whether they're good or bad. They're not even argued anymore. It's just how it is. Kids just need phones now. It's just how it is. All kids need phones. The average age of an iPhone owner now that you start is a 10-year-old. That's normal. That's just what's presented as normal. So with that, we want to go through a few examples in culture of what is being presented to our children as normal. And we're going to go through a few different areas of that.
Yeah, so today, our topic is gender ideology. And what we want to show you right now is how in culture this is simply being presented as normal. It's not necessarily even being argued for. And so we want to start with just some of the different institutions or arenas in which our kids will participate as a member of society. So let's just take entertainment, for instance, right? So entertainment. Last year, you had Ellen Page, who was a successful actress, go through a very public transition, she was on the cover of Time magazine, interviewed by Oprah Winfrey, and of course made all of the media rounds as she transitioned to Elliot Page, right? And this is just presented as kind of the norm. You have Netflix, a platform like Netflix, which offers various shows like Drag Kids that offer various takes on gender ideology, right? What does it mean to be male or female? These kinds of things. How about Blue's Clues? Are you familiar with the TV cartoon Blue's Clues? Yeah, Blue's Clues is aimed at 2 to 5-year-olds, right? That's the target audience. And this past year, during Pride Month in June, Blue's Clues, Nickelodeon on the Blue's Clues YouTube channel released this video. Watch this.
Each other so proudly, and they all go marching in the big parade. Families marching 2 by 2, hurrah, hurrah. Families marching 2 by 2, hurrah, hurrah. This family has 2 daddies, they love each other so proudly, and they all go marching in the big parade. Come on, friends! Families marching 3 by 3, hurrah, hurrah. Families marching 3 by 3, hurrah, hurrah. These papas are non-binary, they love each other so proudly, and they all go marching in the big parade.
Okay, that full video goes all the way up to 10, so you're welcome. And what do you have here? You have an animated drag queen singing this, song for kids about all the different ways that we can be family. So it's non-binary, it's 2 moms, it's 2 dads, and on and on and on. In fact, later on, there's a transgender beaver in there that actually has scars from a double mastectomy on an animated show. So this is 2 to 5-year-olds. Is this being argued? No, it's not being argued. It's simply being presented as the norm. Right? You have Disney. Here's just one example. Disney partners a drag queen with Kermit the Frog to host the LGBTQ Pride concert. And of course, if you've been following any kind of some of the news this past week, there's been leaked video of Disney executives talking about how they want to put LGBTQ characters into their shows on a regular basis. Right? So, and we've just given you a few examples. I mean, I've got multiple examples right here on my computer we could spend the rest of the time looking at. But that's just one area of entertainment. How about another area? What about education?
Yeah, this next clip that we want to show you is a New York public school, middle school teacher, and she posted this video on TikTok about her students, her conversations with students.
So I posted a TikTok yesterday about how I start conversations about gender and sexuality with my students. I ended up privating it for unrelated reasons, but I got a lot of weird feedback where some people like, you shouldn't start these conversations. You shouldn't talk about this with your kids. Yeah, you should. Because for these kids to know that a queer adult exists, to know that trans people exist and are normal, is life-changing to them. They need someone to start those conversations because they don't know they have the permission to ask me about.
So that's a public school teacher, right, saying, hey, we need to initiate these conversations. This was a tweet that I saw just this last week. You can see it's a parent expressing some frustration. My son's first grade assignment from yesterday. This is in the Edmonds School District in Washington State. And what is it? Well, it's identifying a chart that identifies gender. If you choose girl or boy or neither or both, what are the appropriate pronouns to use? Okay, first grade assignment. Of course, maybe you're familiar with the gender unicorn. Gender unicorn is a tool that's in curriculums across the nation that's used as a tool, obviously not to teach high schoolers, right? It's an animated character. This is to teach elementary school kids about the gender, the gender spectrum. This was another tweet from this week. This is a kindergarten teacher in St. Louis Public School posting about reading a pronouns book to her kindergartners, right? So these are kindergartners. And then we'll show you another video clip. This is a first grade teacher. She posts to social media talking about how she uses Remy the reindeer to teach her first graders about pronouns.
This year, I decided to ditch Elf on the Shelf, so I want you to meet Remy the respectful reindeer. Remy isn't tied to Santa Claus or Christmas, and they decided to start us off with a story to give us a hint as to why they're in our class this year. Remy loves the book They, She, He, Easy as ABC because it's a fun, easy way to introduce littles to pronouns. After the story, Remy played a trick on us and tried to have us guess the pronouns that they prefer. But Remy quickly corrected us and helped us learn not to make assumptions about people just based off of what they look like, because our pronouns are all about what we feel inside. So Remy had us practice asking, Remy, what are your pronouns? Together, we learned that our new friend Remy prefers they, them pronouns. My littles were so excited that Remy was feeling safe and welcome in our class team.
Now, these are 5 examples. We literally could spend this whole 2 hours showing you guys examples just from this area of education on, again, back to culture. What in education is being presented to students as normal. This isn't even being argued anymore. This is just presented. This is normal. Okay, so let's leave education and go to the area of social media. And this is a video that we pulled up. You might not know who this guy is, but some of your students might know. He has over 1 million followers on TikTok. And this is how he talks to TikTok users about the normal thing of declaring your pronouns.
Hi, my name is John. You might know me as Chef John Kung, and my pronouns are they and he. TikTok has added pronouns on profiles, allowing all of us to refer to one another with ease, specificity, and care. So this is how you can add pronouns to your profile. For this feature, you'll want to head to the Edit Profile section of your TikTok page. There you'll see an option to add your pronouns in between your username and bio sections. You'll get to select up to 4 pronouns from a list of options. Once you've added your pronouns, they'll show up on your profile, right up at the top, under your name in a light gray font. Feel free to use whatever feels most authentic to you and your identity.
Another social media platform, Facebook. A lot of us are on, I'm on Facebook. I connect with a lot of friends this way. Facebook now is up to 56 gender options that you can declare for your Facebook bio page. 56 and counting.
Yeah, it could actually be more now. It's hard to keep up with these. This week, I got on my LinkedIn profile. I don't know how many of you are on LinkedIn, kind of for business or networking. And when I got on my LinkedIn bio, this popped up, right? What was it? It was a prompt. Show your pronouns on your profile to let others know how to refer to you, right? And there's a button you click, Add Pronouns. Now, again, what we're just showing you is how this is just being presented as the norm. How about business? Business, you have Oreo cookie, right? I mean, Oreo cookies tweeting out recently, trans people exist. You can go into Target. I just read an article about a quote unquote cis man, right, who wanted to, in support of his transgender friends, have his pronouns on his Target badge. And I've heard of other businesses now having people put their preferred pronouns on their work badges. You have an airline. Here's an airline's tweet from a little while ago on Pride Month in support of the different kinds of lifestyles, in support of the different kind of gender expressions. And notice it says, it doesn't matter who you click with. Happy Pride Amsterdam.
I think they actually took this one down because it kind of backfired. The visual alone, can you see how this doesn't really work? And actually would show how a seatbelt wouldn't function. There's only one of these scenarios where the seatbelt functions as it should, and it's kind of obvious. So after they got some pushback, they quickly deleted that off of their social media.
It actually does matter which seatbelts click together, right? Because you can't avoid the nature of reality. But business, we're seeing this in business now. That's being presented as the norm. We see it in government. We see it in government. Maybe you've seen here in your state the potential candidate for Texas governor, Beto O'Rourke, wearing a T-shirt that says what? Don't mess with trans kids. Okay? You have a video from this week. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we're showing you is stuff that is just from this week. The next two videos are from this week. This is the United States Air Force releasing a video celebrating Women's History Month. Watch this.
Hi everyone, it's The Under. I want to wish you a happy Women's History Month. I want to introduce Lieutenant Colonel Bree Fram, who I'm pleased to be joined with this afternoon. Lieutenant Colonel Fram is currently serving as an astronautical engineer here at the Pentagon, working space acquisition policies. Bree is also the one of the highest-ranking transgender service members in the military and is the highest-ranking transgender service member in the Department of the Air Force. So thank you so much for joining us. You've been instrumental, as mentioned, in the stand-up of the Space Force, and now you're working to develop these policies and processes that are really going to help the new Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Space Acquisition and Integration get things moving. So how is that going?
It's going really well. It's an amazing opportunity to be part of something where we can help set the process that allows us to remain ahead of our adversaries in space. What we really want to do is be able to make fast and accurate decisions so that there is never a day without space that our joint force depends on so badly.
We are seeing right now in the EUCOM AOR the importance of our allies and our partners, and really what integrated deterrence means and what it looks like, what it can and should look like. Given your time working security cooperation activities in Iraq, what did that teach you about the importance of our partners and our allies?
Well, it taught me a lot about the interdependence we have, that we can't do anything without them, they can't do anything without us, and that we need to build those trusting relationships ahead of time. We can't build the relationships we need in this world on the day a conflict starts. We need to work those now and build strong allies and partners all around the world.
You are an inspiration to many, right? You are breaking barriers, and it's important though for us, I think, for everyone to understand kind of what motivates you, right? What keeps you, what inspires you, what keeps you motivated?
You know, what really keeps me motivated is the people that are going to come after us. Some people have called me a trailblazer in some of the things that I do, and that's something I really embrace, because what that means is that it's not about me. It's about the fact that the road behind me is now paved, and the generation coming after us has an easier chance to make it to where I've made it, to make it where so many others have made it, but then they've got the time and the energy to go further. So if we can set the conditions where the folks after us get to do even greater things, I'm thrilled.
Absolutely. You know, Secretary Kendall says one team, one fight. And when it comes to ensuring everybody courageous enough to serve our country can do so to their full potential, that's exactly what I think that motto certainly engenders as well. So thank you for spending a little bit of time with us. Thank you all for tuning in. And again, happy Women's History Month.
There's a lot of commentary I could offer on that clip, and we'll get into some more things earlier, but just even what he said there about it isn't about him, it's about paving this road. I think he's actually being honest there, that the agenda isn't just about that one person. Another way our government is getting involved in this conversation is that for the first time ever, U.S. passports will offer an X for a gender marker starting in April. We're in April, starting now. And the designation will be defined as unspecified or another gender identity on forms, the State Department says. Again, I mean, even to think about the safety of, like, why do we have passports and the purpose of them and how this might alter that purpose. And the last thing is, again, Brett and I were busy just this week finding clips for you guys, and this is a clip from just 2 days ago, I believe it was, maybe 3 days ago, and it's the President of the United States, and he issued a statement for Trans Visibility Day.
Everyone's celebrating Transgender Day of Visibility. I want you to know that your president sees you. Jill, Kamala, Doug, our entire administration sees you for who you are, made in the image of God and deserving of dignity, respect, and support. But we know it's hard when there are those out there who don't see you and don't respect you. For example, the onslaught of anti-transgender state laws attacking you and your families is simply wrong. This administration is standing up for you against all these hateful bills, and we're committed to advancing transgender equality in the classroom, on the playing field, at work, in our military, in our housing and healthcare systems, everywhere, simply everywhere. Today, we're announcing even more steps, but there's always more work to do to end the epidemic of violence against transgender women of color and girls of color, to ensure transgender seniors can age with dignity, and to finally pass a bipartisan Equality Act, to help transgender persons around the world live free from discrimination and violence. Above all, to be there with you. To parents of transgender children, affirming your child's identity is one of the most powerful things you can do to keep them safe and healthy. To any transgender American who's struggling, please know that you're not alone. To parents and children alike, please ask for help and know this: you're so brave, you belong, and we have your back. God bless you all. Be brave.
Now, a couple of things I want you to just kind of recognize what's going on there. Notice in this conversation a lot of how things get framed. The framing of these issues is very important. And in our culture today, you will find so much conversation that is framed in terms of victimhood, right? And you'll see a lot of framing of a health threat to individuals. And this is a way to kind of drive, sympathy for your views or your positions on this. It's important, I think, to watch and to see what's going on. But there's a key word that the president uses there. The key word is everywhere. Everywhere. What we've just given you is a sample of how this is everywhere. From something as maybe not as important as maybe your entertainment choices, all the way to the highest political office in our country. What has happened? In our culture now, this kind of gender ideology is simply being presented as the norm. And that is the most powerful way you shape culture, just by presenting what is normal. And then what happens? People go along with the norm. In fact, there may be people even in our own churches. I know there are people even in our own churches who have been shaped by the culture on this and to have come to embrace these ideas. Now notice, at this point, we haven't said anything about the ideas themselves, have we? And we could close in prayer right now and have a really important insight, especially for our young people, impressionable young people who are simply surrounded by these ideas day in and day out, right? And what's the question that's behind this gender ideology, right? Well, what does it mean to be male and female? This is the underlying fundamental question that the culture is asking and answering. And so what we want to do now is spend a little bit of time going through the ways in which the culture is answering. Because as we examine carefully the ideas of the culture, what I think we can see is that the culture is actually lying to us on this. When it comes to these issues, the culture is lying. And so let's look at lie number one. Lie number one is this: we decide our own gender, right? So if you feel like you are the opposite sex, you have some kind of discomfort about who you are, well then what do? You follow your feeling. You decide your own gender. That's what it boils down to. In fact, I want to show you a video. This is from our friend Joseph Backholm, who used to be with the Family Policy Institute of Washington. And he went to a university, and he just did some interviews with some college students who have been soaking in the ocean of culture, right? And have these ideas presented to them as the norm. Hear their answers to his simple question.
In light of all the conversation about gender and identity, we began to wonder if there's even a difference between men and women anymore. We went to Seattle University to find out.
Aware of the conversation going on in Washington State right now around kind of gender identity, gender expression issues, and the ability to access facilities on those grounds?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's gender neutral bathrooms in like all the dorms and stuff like that.
I think that gender is fluid, so if you want to use a bathroom because that's a place and that's a space where you feel comfortable and safe in doing so, then I think that that's completely fine.
I think that if whoever you think you are, if you're male or female, then that's the bathroom you should go into.
I think if it doesn't really negatively affect anybody, then I think anyone should be able to choose what gender they choose to identify as.
People, no matter what their gender identification is, they should be allowed to use whatever restrooms they feel like they identify with.
Is there a difference in your mind between men and women?
No, yes. I mean,
possibly. In general, yes. But I don't know why I think that.
Socially, currently, yes, there is. There is no need for that difference to exist, scientifically and logically.
If you think that you're a male, if you think that you're a female, that matters more than the biological difference.
There's not much difference besides what society forces onto people.
And how do you know the difference between men and women?
By what people think they are. So you can't judge someone just on their looks.
I don't think there's any one way to really distinguish between a man or a woman, and I don't think it's necessary.
It's not always consistent. It has a high probability, 98% of the time I can get it right. There is some ambiguity.
I think, there are ways to tell, but then again, you can always be wrong.
What would you say I am?
Just judging off of your looks, I would say that you're a male.
I would probably assume a man, but then you never know.
A male.
Why would you say that?
Based on how I look at you.
Do you think that's a problem?
Yeah, probably.
Do you think the difference between men and women matters for any reason?
No, not really.
I think most sociologists agree that the concept of gender is more of a societal construct.
I do think it matters somewhat, yeah.
To me, no. I don't feel as if it matters to me because at the end of the day, the person is just a person.
No, I don't think it should matter.
And the differences on a social level are simply a product of a biased society.
Then is there a reason to have those labels, male or female?
I don't think so. I think that it's, again, a social construct of this binary that we're given at birth.
There is kind of a difference, but at the same time, if someone wants to identify as one or both or as nothing, I also find that completely okay. And
There may be nothing more self-evident in the natural universe than the fact that every animal species is divided into two halves, male and female. Yet the most intelligent of those species seems to be wrestling with whether male or female are actually real things. Have we discovered something new, or have we become too clever for our own good?
Sometimes when I call a lady sir by accident, they get very offended.
Okay, so that just gives you a sample of where young people are at on this. Now, let me just say something here. Number one, if you are kind of part of an older generation, right, some of this stuff may just seem way out in left field for you, right? You grew up at a different time and a different culture, and this may seem so radical, and it's easy to simply laugh it off or mock it and then just dismiss. And that is not an option for us. Because there are others of you in here, a younger generation, who this is what you're growing up with. And this is what many of your peers hold to. And you know you can't just mock people and engage that way. Right? And we never should engage in that way anyway. But what I want to say here is what we want to do, no matter where you're at on this, where your views are at, or what generation you're a part of, what we want to do is think carefully about this argument, okay? And so what's the primary argument that these young people are making? Now, we could unpack all kinds of things in there, right? I mean, just even some of the internal contradiction. One of the girls, the kind of the blonde girl in the white t-shirt, was saying, you can't make a judgment just on the basis of how someone looks. And then just a few seconds later, he says, well, what do you think I am? And she says, well, based upon how you look, a male. Right? I don't know if you caught that contradiction. And when you deny reality, you're going to find yourselves in these kind of contradictions. Okay? But that's even a minor point. What is the main argument? The main argument is that gender is merely a social construct. Okay, so what we need to do here is we need to define some terms. What do we mean by social construct? A social construct is something that doesn't exist out there in the real world. It's not a real feature of reality, but instead it's merely the creation of society. Okay? And so for instance, just take Women's History Month, or Black History Month, or Indigenous Peoples History, or whatever, anything like that. We'd say that would be a social construct. There's not like Women's History Month that exists out there in the world somewhere and you go discover it. Okay, so there are things that are social constructs. The question is, what things fall under the category of a social construct? Is gender one of those things? Okay, because we know not all things are social constructs. And if you think something is a social construct and it's not, you could get yourself in a lot of trouble if you actually try to live your ideas out consistently. So let me ask you, do you think gravity is merely a social construct? Right? And that's what we call a clear case example. I lay out an example. Okay, is everything a social construct? Here's an example, gravity. So if I determine in my mind that gravity no longer applies to me, and I get up on the top of this roof and I jump, does that change reality? No, because gravity exists out there independent of what you or I think, independent of what you or I affirm. How about gender? Well, we're going to have to navigate through a number of terms that are used here in this discussion. So let me give you some definitions. First, we need to understand what we mean when we use the term sex. Okay? And I think I'm going to give you 4 definitions. These 4 definitions will help us navigate the issues here. Sex is a biological reality. Here's how we would define sex. It's either of the 2 main categories, male and female, into which humans and many other living things are divided on the basis of their reproductive functions. Now, of course, there's more biological reality to men and women than just reproduction, but the term sex is the term that we use to describe or refer to the biological reality that has to do with reproduction, right? So sex has to do with the way the body is organized in respect to reproduction. Now, notice something here. Biological sex, on this definition, is unchanging. And it's almost always immediately obvious. It's almost always immediately obvious. There's no in-between. There's no kind of spectrum of sexes on this definition. There are males and females. Now, I know what the question is, and a lot of people will bring up the issue of intersex, right? What about those who are born intersex? Well, intersex is a condition in a person where they are born with ambiguous genitalia. There's some kind of physical problem there. And this is not, this doesn't represent a normal condition. It actually represents an abnormal condition. It's not the way things are supposed to be. Now, according to the Intersex Society of North America, the number of people who are born with this condition is 0.05%. It's a very small minority. Now, that doesn't say anything about their value or the compassion we should have for individuals who have that condition. What I'm just saying is just because you point to these abnormalities with the intersex individual doesn't mean now you have a third sex and that we can then expand that on and on. You don't make rules out of exceptions. And so you don't have multiple sexes. There's no sex spectrum. There are males and then there are females, okay? So that's the first definition. Now we have this other term, right? What about gender then? Well, what's gender? Well, traditionally, these terms were interchangeable, sex and gender. Our culture has kind of pulled them apart a little bit, and now gender means how we identify, how we personally identify, and then present ourselves as either male or female to other people, right? So gender identity is a psychological belief. Gender is what you believe yourself to be. And so then what do? We kind of manifest that in bodily ways, whether it's the way we dress or how we do our hair or if we wear makeup or not or these kinds of things. We present ourselves as that thing which we identify. And of course, gender is a very important idea. There's so many ways in which we organize things around the two, around this idea of gender. Whether it's men's groups or women's groups or athletics, which of course is under fire now, or even marriage or friendships or those kinds of things. And so gender is how we identify. So here's the distinction between sex and gender that our culture has made. Sex refers to the biology. Gender refers to the psychology. Gender refers to your mental state, all right? And we've got a big question when it comes to these two issues that we're going to ask in just a second. But there's two more terms that we need to define. The next one is gender dysphoria. And I think this is an important definition, an important distinction to make. There are individuals who struggle with gender dysphoria. What is that? That's the condition of feeling that one's emotional or psychological identity, your mental state, as a male or as a female, whatever you identify with, does not match up with your biology, right? It's opposite of your biological sex. And that condition is described as gender dysphoria. Now, it's important to make that distinction and not just jump to the fourth definition, because I want you to understand that there are people who are in this category who feel discomfort. There's psychological discomfort. They may feel like I am a man in a woman's body or vice versa. There's psychological discomfort. But not everybody who experiences gender dysphoria will identify that way with how they feel. Not only that, they won't also think that they are that thing. So if I think I'm a woman, I am a woman. There are people who have gender dysphoria who do not affirm that view. Okay? And so there's a category of individuals that we don't talk much about these folks in the culture because we just jump right next to, we jump to the next definition. And this is transgenderism. Transgenderism is the view that people are the gender they prefer to be. They are the gender that they think or desire or feel like. And so this is why you have a statement like this: trans women are women. Trans women, they're the real thing. And so the ideology here is that you are what you claim to be. So a transgender boy is a boy, not merely a girl who identifies as a boy. And there are some in the transgender community who don't even want to refer to trans men as trans men. They're simply men, right? And this is the ideology that is overtaking the culture. Now, those distinctions are very important because with these distinctions, it leads us to a really important question. Here's a question that we need to ask. This is what our culture is doing. Our culture is disconnecting gender identity, the psychology, from the body, the biology. And we need to ask the question, why do we think that we can or should disconnect our gender identity from our bodies? That's the question to answer. That's the question to ask. Why, on what is the basis for disconnecting how you think from how your body is made? And so that's the question to ask and to wait for the answer. Now, given what we've looked at, what's the answer? How does the culture answer back on this? It's simply your feelings. It's simply some internal state, your feelings, your desires, your wants. And on that basis alone, then what? We prescribe a whole regimen of medical treatment, right? Such that we will even cut off perfectly healthy body parts on young men and young women on this basis alone. Now think about how radical this is. Is there any other condition? I mean, imagine going to your doctor saying, "Doctor, I don't feel good. There's something wrong in my stomach. In fact, I was examining myself the other day, and I was looking around, and I realized I've got cancer in my stomach. Doc, can you go ahead and prescribe a course of chemotherapy and radiation?" Now, what's the doctor going to say? Well, no, slow down. You, as the patient, don't get to diagnose yourself. Maybe you feel like you got cancer, but that might not be the case. That might not be the reality. Okay, let's do some testing first. Let's do some diagnostics work here, and then we'll see what's really wrong with you. If you have cancer, yeah, of course we'll give you this course of treatment. Okay? Well, what's going on in the situation? A patient walks in with a self-diagnosis. And then what does the doctor do? On the basis of a self-diagnosis, the doctor then prescribes treatment. There is not a single other condition where we would do such a thing. That's where we're at in the culture. Now imagine if we did this with other things, right? Imagine if we did this with, how about race? On the basis of your feelings, you get to determine your race. Right, here's an example. Rachel Dolezal. Do you guys remember this story from a couple years ago? Right? Rachel Dolezal, for years, she led us kind of a secret life in the Pacific Northwest. She, all of her friends believed that she was a black woman and that she was passionate about African American issues. She was even a leader in the local NAACP in Spokane, Washington. And then it came out that Rachel Dolezal is not an African American woman. In fact, here's a picture of her as a young girl. She was a white woman, right? And here are her parents. She had white biological parents. And when she was interviewed, what did she say? I identify more as an African American. And did the culture say, well, on that basis, well, then we will accept you as an African American? No. Her claim was rejected. It didn't matter how Rachel Dolezal felt about the status of her own race, right? So there's an example where on the basis of your feelings, we don't say, well, yeah, we're going to go along with that. Instead, we reject the claim. Okay. How about if you are, maybe age? Take age for instance. You feel younger than you really are. Anyone experience that? Yeah. I do all the time, right?
No, you just wish you were younger than you really are.
No, I identify as a 29-year-old man, honey. Don't step on my self-expression here. Now imagine, or let's say maybe you don't feel that way, and so you go and you get some plastic surgery. And through plastic surgery, you actually look younger, right? Well, does plastic surgery that makes someone look younger actually change the age of the patient? The obvious answer is no. Why not? Guess what? There's a biological reality. And it doesn't matter how you feel about it. It doesn't matter what you desire. In fact, reality is completely indifferent to how you feel. Okay, now I'm not suggesting we should be too. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. We're just looking carefully at the argument here and examining the argument. And what I'm doing is giving examples where the psychology doesn't match up with the biology, and we don't go along with the psychology, right? Why would we think that changing our body parts would make us younger? We don't think that. And in the same way, why would we think that when it comes to being male and female? You can't change the biological. You can cut off body parts. But of course, biological makeup of men and women goes far beyond just the body parts, right? Now, how about anorexia? Here's a great example where the psychology doesn't match the biology. Imagine a young person who has body image struggles, right? And she goes into a therapist. What does the therapist do? If that girl, that 16-year-old girl says, you know what? I look in the mirror and I feel like I'm 300 pounds. Does the therapist say, well, on the basis of your self-assessment, I think you probably ought to go on a diet then? No, what he first does is looks at the biological reality, right? Oh, it turns out you're actually a 90-pound teenage girl. And you think you're grossly overweight. And so you struggle with anorexia. What do we treat? We treat the mental states, right? We treat the mind, not the body. But in gender ideology, we do the exact opposite. We don't treat the mind. We endorse whatever is in the mind, and then we treat the body. And this leads us to do all kinds of things that in the long term will hurt our young people. And now we have an explosion of gender clinics all across the nation. Over 60 gender clinics. That's just solely gender clinics. That's all they focus on. That doesn't even talk about all the different medical offices, all the Planned Parenthoods out there that will do these kinds of things as well. And so what's the lie? That you can decide your own gender. We don't do this in any other area where we say the mental state determines the biological reality, okay?
Maven exists to help the next generation know truth, pursue goodness, and create beauty for the cause of Christ. To find out more, check out maventruth.com.